computers the same way. But maybe we don't need control systems and SCADA computers to be that way. Maybe we're doing things in the wrong kind of order. And if nothing else, we can make the change, I hope. That's what I've got. Time for questions? Lots of time for questions, actually, because I talked really, really fast. Yep.
So, I want to thank you. This is the talk I've been waiting to hear on SCADA for the last 10 years.
Awesome. This is the 4th year in a row I submitted it. But this year, Jeff Moss said, "You're doing this talk," and I said, "Yes, sir." Sorry, question in the front?
So, I've been working for 2 years in process control and security, so basically maintaining every 6 months you double the knowledge and you're really being stressed to work with engineers to understand the way they work. So I agree with most of what you say.
Mm-hmm.
I think that
Mostly agreeing. Sorry, I'm just putting it back into the microphone. Mostly agreeing.
I think that here the problem is that so IT security consultants suck in this world because
Yes, I am one. I know.
no, in the sense that they are facing they believe that with their own, it's called an old technology, they can solve the problem of these people, right? There is a different playground here.
Mm-hmm.
So you cannot just install integrators. So I work with, I'm in contact with some companies who say, well, let's install Norton to
Sure.
detect intruders. But
Mm-hmm.
Norton doesn't have any serious signals, or I mean, signals for known vulnerabilities in SCADA or process control. But you can find out one new every day, right? So I think that's the biggest problem. And so they suck in the sense that they are trying to find out the problem.
Okay, so let me rephrase that just to make sure that we've got it. So making the assertion that the biggest problem that we have is that we're trying to do things using current technology, and most of that current technology doesn't have the right bits and pieces. And I would say, yes, absolutely, with one little added bonus on that. And that's that the way that you're going to get into systems has nothing at all to do with the SCADA protocol itself. You can't drive a user interface across Modbus TCP. It doesn't work that way. But you can gain access to the X Windows protocol that's being used to display the HMI. You can gain access to RDP or Windows vulnerabilities. So it's that simultaneously control systems are extraordinarily special and very, very different, and also exactly the same. And the kinds of vulnerabilities that we need to be looking for and the kinds of things we need to protect against are exactly the same things that we need to protect against on the enterprise IT side, because those air gaps don't exist in practice. Those DMZs don't exist in practice. Those firewalls are interesting because they're acting entirely as routers. So the solution has to be the working together. It has to be the saying, okay, tell me what's different and special, because everyone is different and special. But then let's work on what we can work on. Let's solve the problems that we can solve instead of waiting for some magic bullet. The perfect, this is right up there with web application firewalls. I mean, someone will come out with an application firewall for SCADA, and the rule set's going to be very simple. The rule set's going to say, I want you to process and manage and monitor and control each and every one of these SCADA protocols. And then the bottom rule is going to be, if it's RDP, X Windows, Telnet, SSH, or a database connection, just pass it clear. And then you're not firewalling the stuff that you need to firewall. And that's that kind of error. Right.
Yes, you can look into OPC.
Yep.
ABB or Siemens, they have their own implementation.
No. Oh yeah, I wonder where OPC doesn't look anything at all like any of the others. So, yeah, absolutely.
So, I think that, so where I don't agree is about the past success, because I don't see really success in this work, because, yeah, basically because of the vendors. Because the vendors don't allow you to use it. I mean, there are some controls that have an embedded web server you can switch off.
Mm-hmm.
One, because they are doing licensing for that. So they check if the license is working, and for this they
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know that there's a solution. If you find one though, let me know. There hasn't been one in my career, and I've been at this for a long, long time. I mean, I started doing process control in manufacturing 15 years ago, and I haven't seen a decent solution from anyone yet. Orange shirt that matched the ones I was wearing yesterday.
In the control systems world, obviously, systems are designed to last 10, 15, maybe 20 years.
Yep.
In the Windows world, a lot of people use 5 to 7 years out.
Mm-hmm.
But we've got a lot of control systems that are being put on Windows.
Yep.
And how do you reconcile that world versus what we call control systems?
Okay, so the question is, most control systems are being installed with a 10, 15, 20-year life cycle, but they're being installed with control elements that are manufacturer limited to 5 or 6 years. You're absolutely correct. The reconciliation for that, this is going to turn into a rant really, really fast. Are there any engineers in the room? Close your ears, because this one's exactly on your heads. 50 years ago, the engineering profession didn't do what it was supposed to do. A bunch of people started calling themselves software engineers, and the engineering profession didn't protect against that. They all need to get a thunk on the head for that. What's happening now, and when you look at how those systems are being implemented or installed, almost all of them have an engineering stamp on them. And that engineer who stamped it is personally liable for the system as built. And that engineer can in no way suggest that he or she understands the complexity of the system that they just structured and stamped. And that failure is the critical failure. And in control systems in SCADA, fortunately or unfortunately, there are an absolute deck of engineers. And they're all on the hook for this mistake. They're all on the hook for saying, yes, I'm okay with this entire system and I will sign off on this entire system. And there's this little circle in the middle that says Windows. And there's no one who can sign off and say Windows is a deterministic system that is of engineering grade. Engineers go to great lengths to determine all of the characteristics of T6061 aluminum before they're going to specify that this part should be built out of it. They know its breaking strength, they know if you try and break it this way or if you try and break it that way, they know its ductility, they know all kinds of things about it, they know how it behaves at different temperatures. Ask an engineer to give you the same explanation that they can give you about a metal rod, about a Windows machine. And then you can find out who's exactly at fault for that system. So the reconciliation, it's time for engineers to step up. It's time for the engineering profession to tell software engineers to put it down. It's time for people who want to do this for real to go back to school. Getting an engineering degree as an adult sucks. Going back to school as an adult sucks. But facing facts, I'm on career number 3. And I'm not that old. And what I went to school for has nothing to do with what I do for a living now. So if you're not going back to school every 10 years, you're making a mistake. The much more actionable version of an answer to that question that isn't a rant is very simple. The way that it's being done now, which is that those computer systems stay installed, they don't get changed out. If you think that any power grid in North America runs on current generation hardware or current generation operating systems, you are incorrect. They all run on previous generations, and I'm not talking N-1, I'm talking N-2, N-3. Most power grid HMI is bought off of eBay because it's not available from the manufacturer anymore. Unless they've got a Windows shim in place, in which case it's probably an X-Windows station rather than an actual Unix station. Depends on which EMS system it is. It's an absolute mess. And there's no quick or easy fix for it. Anybody else? Sure. Department of Homeland Security and Lofty Perch, yeah. This isn't a tools talk, this is a we need to stop talking talk because we're all talking too much. There are lots of very good assessment tools available. CSAT's definitely one of them. But it's kind of the wrong tool in the wrong time in the wrong place. The problems that are being faced in process control or in control systems in general aren't the kinds of ones that are even amenable to that kind of solution. The big joke is You're not going to end up with cyber cookies of death if you manage to break into a cookie manufacturing plant. But most cookie manufacturing plants are not at a point where they can absorb that material. They are entirely vendor dependent. And that vendor dependency means they, much to your point before, they have to buy what the vendor sells. And the desire on the part of the vendors to sell something good is sharply limited. They're much more interested in selling what they had available for you last year. This is essentially the copyright problem as expressed in a different way. Because they can sell you another control system for free, the marginal cost of an additional control system from them, from a manufacturing perspective, is nil. So they want to sell you the control system they already have. They don't want to develop a new one. They don't want to re-engineer one. And in a lot of cases, it's almost impossible to do. You know, the network map for an EMS takes 15 years to develop. There is no way that you can just buy another EMS. You're almost vendor locked because of your network map or because of your process map. So you have to keep buying. Like if you have a Wonderware based process, you pretty much have to buy Wonderware, or you have to face re-engineering your process. And if you don't watch a whole lot of how it's made on Discovery Channel, you probably should, because you'll learn stuff that will blow your mind. Yep.
Would you agree that those same statements hold true for what we built today in the emerging or developing world? In other words, do they have a chance to start over and do it better, or no?
There's an interesting kind of problem there because they've got the generational skip issue, right? So this is the question: is in the developing world, are they facing the same issues that we're facing? They have the generational skip issue, right? Which is that they don't have legacy technologies. There is no publicly switched telephone network in most developing countries. There are cell phone networks. They just skipped that entire generation of technology completely. In large part, this means that there's that same sort of opportunity for a positive thing to happen, to say we're not going to roll out that technology at all. But I think the issue that we're seeing is the technologies that they're implementing aren't new. The specific devices aren't new. The specific devices are old. So they're taking what we've cast off as being no longer useful or no longer valuable and implementing that. So they're in large part going through the same kind of problems. The fix, I think, is going to be a much simpler one because they don't face the same sorts of issues that we do around intellectual property and copyright. So when something comes along that's better, they'll just implement it. It's kind of a good thing and kind of a bad thing. Depends on which side of the fence you're on. Any other questions? Nope. Oh, yep. Right in the middle.
I interpret from the presentation that media hype is strong, right?
Yep. The media hype might be a little too strong because the sky is falling, yes.
Are you aware of any vulnerabilities in drugs, widespread?
Yes. Huge. It's been said before, and I'll say it in a very calm kind of way. Most of what we consider to be problems, I should point out, I'm Canadian, which is kind of like American, only we're a hat on America. Most of the problems that we face are very first world kind of problems. I have to stand in line to get my new iPhone, because iPhone comes out in Canada this Friday. I have to stand in line for an iPhone. You know, it's kind of a real big first world problem. The reality is that our systems our lifestyle is so incredibly brittle that it's not going to crack, it's going to shatter. The electric grid has more in common with safety glass than it does with window glass. And the best example I can give for that, and one that will hit home with anybody who lives, north of the middle of the United States, if the August 2003 blackout in the Northeast had happened in February, you would have had human sickles because nobody has the ability to heat their home without the power grid. If you have a high efficiency furnace, it needs electricity to turn on. Getting natural gas to that high efficiency furnace requires power for the pumps and the natural gas substations. Our lifestyle is very, very brittle, and it could go very, very bad at almost any time. The only real solution to that from a solutions development kind of perspective is to increase the redundancy in the system